So I left the United States for one very simple reason. I graduated college and I couldn't find a job with the degree that everybody told me to get. I'm sure that many of you guys already know the whole story, but even if I were to go back today and try to reestablish myself, a lot of people would look at my resume and be like, why aren't you using your degree? What the hell's wrong with you? And, well, the truth of the matter is I can't really use my degree because no one will let me. And that's one of the biggest ironies of it all, is if you don't use your degree for 2 or 3 years and you decide to do something else, essentially you become worthless. So you have like this 6-month, 1-year window to actually get a job, and if you don't, then it's almost as like you didn't go to college at all. And that's certainly how I feel. The only thing about college that benefited me is it allowed me to get a 1-ticket trip to Japan. And that was pretty cool because honestly, I don't really think I'm going to go back to the United States. There's no reason for me to. If I were to go back to, Milwaukee right now, the only option that I would have in front of me is getting a job at like a coffee shop or a McDonald's or something that probably wouldn't even use my degree whatsoever. And I just don't really see the point of that. My current job isn't exactly the best, but the fact that I have YouTube and the platform and everything really keeps me going. But I look at the United States and there are too many people in our country who are proud of how shitty our infrastructure really is. Like, I talk about healthcare a lot, but it's not just healthcare. It's the fact that the food that I can get at a convenience store in Japan is like 3 or 4 times the quality of what you'd find at a Quick Trip in Wisconsin or one of those small gas stations, I forget the name, back in Massachusetts. Like, I remember when I was in Rhode Island and I just graduated, I had absolutely no money. And I was living by with a friend in the basement of a house in the middle of Cranston, Rhode Island. And in the middle of the night, I would get really hungry, and I'd have like maybe a few dollars to spare. Like, I think in total I maybe had like $200 to $300 saved up because I didn't have a part-time job. And so I'd go over to these convenience stores, and the burgers in the States didn't even really look like real food. I would bite into these things that they just like throw into a microwave, and it tasted like a mixture of rubber and like gamey meat in between like 2 sad excuses for a bun. And like here in Japan, like yesterday I decided to get myself a cheeseburger at one of the Family Marts. And as I bit into this thing, like, yeah, it doesn't taste as fresh as something that you get from a McDonald's. And by the way, don't eat McDonald's. But I was like, wow, I could eat this and not feel super terrible after the fact and probably get one of these like, once a week if I'm in a hurry. But in the States, no, it's just like the food is low quality. There's no health care for us to really appreciate. And then, like, unless you're really lucky in college or if you make like the right choice to get a job that people actually value, like engineering or some kind of like PhD, or I don't even think computer science is really that worthwhile anymore. It's just like all of it doesn't feel like it's worth it. And that's kind of why I just look at my position here in Japan like a blessing, because I don't have to deal with it anymore. Like I said, my job's not perfect. I don't do like the most interesting thing in the world, but and I don't really want to get into the details of this video, but if I go back to the States, there's just nothing. There's nothing there for me. And I would probably be living like a lot of the people I know who are still there, just at their parents' house, in a house that they bought sometime in the 1990s or 1980s, enjoying the wealth and assets that are granted to them. But, if they were to start all over again, given that we have like 95% of the wealth of people like 40 or 50 years ago, like it's very unlikely that you'd be able to even get a nice house, let alone a good apartment. Like in Tokyo, the most of the apartments here are at least like, actually at most, probably about like $600, $700 for a place like as big as mine. And my apartment, is not super small by any stretch of the imagination. I think in the United States, if I were living in Boston or New York, this place would cost me easily like $1,800 or like $2,000, $2,100. But no, here, I'm not even paying it $1,000, and it's comfortable. So just one of those things that you think about as an American. You're like, we really are too proud of how crappy our country has become. And like living here in Japan, I look back at the States and I don't feel like schadenfreude. I don't feel better. It's just I have no reason to go back because the quality of life here is noticeably good. That's about all.